Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I am your host, Matt Belair, and today we have a fantastic guest for you. She has done almost 1,000 shamanic ceremonies between Ayahuasca, Huachuma, and San Pedro. She has trained for 10 years and an apprentice with maestros and has studied with multiple consciousness experts, including Tim Freck. How do you pronounce that? Freck or Freak?
Freak.
Tim
It's
Freak.
long.
Okay, cool. Cool. He's coming. Yeah, he's coming up on Monday. Tim Freak, Richard Moss, Adi Ashanti. She's a highly experienced facilitator and helps people integrate, which is super important, spiritual teachings, metaphysical knowledge, and plant medicines. Welcome to the show, Tina Courtney.
Thanks for having me. And please call me Kat. That's kind of my crazy shamanic nickname. So
Cat's your. Oh, all right. So get the cat energy in there.
exactly. It's important
Right
energy.
on.
Yeah.
I'm in Sedona right now, so that recently came to the forefront of my awareness through like a 40-minute talk with a bunch of girls in Sedona at like a sound healing. They were all talking about cat energy, and I was like, I never thought about that, but that's interesting. So how do we get this started? One of your either clients or somebody you've worked with has reached out, and then I got to look at some of your work. Really interesting stuff. I'm a big fan of ayahuasca when used correctly. Just like anything, I think that now because it's more popular, a lot of people are, we really need clarity on that. So I'm really happy you're on the show. But do you want to give some people just a little bit about your background, because really interesting, a lot of experience, and I really like the intention you have moving forward. I think it's all very great stuff.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So in a nutshell, I found my way to a shamanic circle almost 12 years ago because I was kind of in a space of turmoil. I had manifested like the dream life, but I was really miserable, dealing with being bipolar and being an emotional wreck. And so I followed a boy to the jungle and did this ayahuasca thing the first time. And the first cycle, which was 3 ceremonies, was just like the total reset, the spiritual awakening that so many people talk about. And it took about a year of going back and forth to the jungle before I said, I'm going to devote my life to this. I'm going to go all in. Why can't a white girl from Montana be a shaman? No, why not? So I met the teacher that agreed to work with me, which was kind of the sign that was ordained, not just by my own desires, but by ayahuasca, the plants themselves, so I went full force into studying as an apprentice and got to host a large group here in the States. And like you said, did almost probably 1,000 or more ceremonies of ayahuasca, both as a participant and then later as a guide, co-facilitator. And and then did that for about 10 years. And in a way that it worked so well that I got to the space of realizing there's nothing to fix. There's no such thing as a healer in my estimation. Like the darkness that we go through, the drama that we go through is actually part of our evolution and our awakening. And I really resonate with what you said in the beginning, that this work has become so prevalent that there's a lot of misuse. There's a lot of people stepping up because they drank ayahuasca once and are now like, I can lead a ceremony. And oh my gosh, there's just like some craziness that happens because of that. So last year sometime, I just decided to step out of the circles, running the circles, and become a voice on the outside. Because there's a lot of people doing ceremony. There's not a lot of people talking about it because as a shaman, from the perspective as a shaman, because you can't do both because of laws, legalities. You can't run ceremonies and be on your podcast talking about this because it puts people in danger if you're super public. So I let go of the identity of wanting to be, this facilitator, this shaman, and said, instead, I'm going to serve people on the outside. I'm going to help with preparation and integration, and I'm going to talk about the proper use of this.
Amazing. Yeah, it's very important stuff. So you have the experience, like 1,000 ceremonies is a lot of ceremonies. I've done 8, and all 8 were whole entire universes and lifetimes within themselves. And yeah, so now, with the my Burning Man name happens to be ayahuasca, and it's awesome because when my first burn, I was like, I don't want a crappy name. So I kind of did a meditation. I was like, I want a name that suits me and that I'm happy to say. And so at the end, they're like, "Yo, we have your name. It's ayahuasca." And I was like, "Why did you call me that? That's like so amazing." Like, to me, ayahuasca is love. Ultimately, the one word for me, it's love. It's like love for yourself, love for others. And they're like, "Well, you didn't shut up about it all week, so we figured we would just call you it." So I'm really, I'm a really big fan of it because it's an amazing medicine. But on the flip side, what I didn't realize is, like, I've kind of been on the spiritual path most of my life. Like, I've been really, just by that, I mean, what's the nature of existence? What's my purpose? How do I live a good, proper, moral, but exciting life? And what is God? What am I capable of? All those deep questions. But so many people would take the medicine that I found, and they have like this spiritual awakening, and then all of a sudden nothing changes at all. And I was like, dude, it hits you like a freight train. You see it, right? But then they go back to kind of like the old pattern. So I think integration is so massive. So I wonder if you can, maybe we just start with the basics, for people who don't know anything about ayahuasca. What is ayahuasca? What are a few things that you should be aware of before doing a ceremony? And like maybe why you would want to do it and why you don't want to do it, kind of clearing up a lot of, because I remember when I got into it, there was less information there is now, but it's like, what is this? It's like you're literally stepping into a portal, and it freaks people out. So can you kind of speak on that ramble there?
Yeah, totally. And both your
Cool.
questions, why would I want to do it and why wouldn't I want to do it, are super important. And we usually only focus on half of that. So just the basics around ayahuasca is it is a super powerful psychotropic tea that's actually composed of two plants from the jungle, right? There's ayahuasca herself and the chacruna. And chacruna has DMT, which most of us now know is in our pineal glands, is responsible for out-of-body experiences. Some people on a soul level feel like that's the physical manifestation of our soul, is the DMT in our bodies. So when we take plants that have DMT, we can have dreamlike out-of-body experiences that are obviously really spiritual and profound. So some people call ayahuasca a healer. I actually call her a consciousness expander. I don't think she heals anything physical or emotional. I think she shows us what we have in our bodies, the blockages, the stories, the patterns, and gives us an opportunity to shift and change those. But we have to do the work, which is the heart of your question around integration. So people that are called to use this medicine, if they're really at a place in their lives where they're like, you know what, enough with the stuff that's holding me back. I really want to understand consciousness and myself in a deeper way. And they're willing to put in the work that's involved in walking that walk, not just talking it. Then, being called to this path is fantastic. I can be the fast track in this process. But if you're still attached to your patterns and you want a quick fix rather than something that tells you have to do the work, ayahuasca ain't it. I see a lot of people coming to the medicine just like wanting, like, help me manifest my dream relationship or get rid of this illness I have or whatever. And as you don't just take the medicine and everything gets fixed for you. It's like you have to do the work. So that's kind of the core reason of why you'd want to do it. Whether you have physical things, whether you have spiritual things you're struggling with, emotional, mental, the process will help all of it. But it requires you to find out, like, that you're a superhero and to step into that more and more and more.
Love that. That's a fantastic answer. There's a few things I was thinking. Oh, I read this article recently, and it was around a shaman saying, like, I'm not doing any more ceremonies for rich Silicon Valley people coming in looking for, the answer to God. It's like, no more. So I think that it is, in a way, the way that I explain it to people, it's like the difference between a duck's consciousness and a human's consciousness. Like, that gap is wherever I go. I don't know what it is. I can't sort it out. There's no language for it. And so when if a duck were to take ayahuasca, he'd become conscious. We could show him some stuff about what's going to go down. Goes back to being a duck. And then his other duck friends, like, what happened? Then he just whacks at him. There's no chance. It's just beyond that. But so you see it, and you're right in the sense that you kind of realize that you are like this super being, this superpower. But you have to do the work. Like it's like the magic pill is like, okay, it makes it really clear. That's the magic. It makes it really clear, and it really shows you from a perspective that you couldn't even imagine, right? And it's going to work on that problem. But if you realize, hey, you're really overweight and you can't breathe because you smoke cigarettes all the time, and you're angry all the time because you drink 5 nights a week, then it'll show you. Look at that. Not rocket science here, bud. We're gonna get them all. And then it's like, this is what you got to do. Stop smoking so many cigarettes. Stop drinking like crazy. Stop yelling at people. You got to go through this. And then so after the medicine is the integration. So that being said, why would people what are some things to consider before doing a ceremony? And then I really want to get into, what you've learned over thousands of ceremonies and what you feel is most important to put out to the world after doing all that integration and medicine work and things like that.
Okay, awesome. So let's start with the prep, the before. And this is for people who haven't drank for the first time or people who are looking to dive in deeper, who want to go back for more ceremonies. The first step, if you really feel called to this, and it's really, truly a calling, right? It's not like a mental, hey, I think I should do this. If you're forcing it from your mind and you don't feel it in your body that you're really called to this, that's another reason not to do it yet, until you can feel it in the cells of your beingness that I need to do this. It's time. That's why we call it a calling. So if you're in that space, whether, again, you've worked with it before or you're diving in deeper, be really discerning who you sit with. That's my first message to people, especially these days. Really discerning. Don't be afraid to ask a ton of questions about where the medicine comes from, what the lineage is that you're about to step into, because some of it has religious dogma attached to it, some of it doesn't. And you may love that religious space and you may not, but you should know before you sit in ceremony what you're dealing with. You should know how long the facilitator has been working with the medicine, how he or she gets the medicine, the modalities that are going to be used in ceremony, whether they're, Shipipo trained from the jungle or Colombian, or they're Westerners that just give it and hope for the best, because there are all types of circles coming up. So to be choosy. And again, trust your instincts around that. If it smells fishy, if it doesn't feel honest or safe, don't go there. Because I know safety is a weird word for some of us. We're going to be physically safe in ceremony, most likely. Ayahuasca is not going to kill you, but spiritually and emotionally, we're so ridiculously vulnerable on this medicine that if we're not in capable hands and we go through a dark night of the soul, which will happen eventually, you drink ayahuasca enough, you're going there. And you want to go there with somebody that knows how to walk through that space, that isn't afraid of the darkness, both your darkness and especially their own. So that's a really important thing to hold as sacred. And if you find a group that feels like they've been doing it a long time and that they're doing it with integrity and they're not afraid to answer these questions, if anybody, that you're looking to work with doesn't want to answer any of these questions, don't work with them. There's not a level of transparency that's safe. They should be really transparent and honest with how they operate. So that's the big stuff. Then once you have the journey, the integration is really, it's such a personal process, but you named it. We always get homework. We always get work to do to clear the space that we were in before in order to manifest what we want in the next chapter of our lives. We don't get it by sitting at home reading Facebook and being like, yeah, I drank the magic medicine and now I'm going to be abundant and healthy and have the dream relationship. It just doesn't happen that way. So, for most of us, I think it takes a partner, a coach, a friend, a confidant that will be honest with us in the reflection of how we're showing up. But I call this shadow work. Essentially, we're taking what is unconscious and making it conscious, and that's shadow work. To do that alone, it's not impossible. It's just really difficult. It's really difficult to be able to look at your own shit and to be really clear on how to work with that. So that's why I've stepped into the role of trying to be a coach for the integration of all these peak experiences, because I've been there, been through a lot of my own shadow work, and I'm never done, but I got to a place where I feel like, yeah, I can hold other people's hands as they go through this work and tell them it's worth it. It's worth feeling your way through all this darkness to get to the other side. But it really helps to have a partner.
Right. Yeah. Well, I definitely agree with all that. And I'm glad you touched on the importance of finding the right people, finding the right shaman. So I was going to ask, like, how do you find the right shaman? Because a lot of people are asking, and, don't rush it. Intuitive, ask a lot of questions, really great feedback. And, listen to your gut if something is off, because that's a space that you want. I've done it 8 times, and I tell people, like, in my past life, every past life regression I do, I'm a shaman by the water. I always see that. Now in this life, it's, mushrooms and things like that. Cause like you could do mushrooms and I could navigate the space for you. You're going to be fine on mushrooms. LSD, I could probably do, even though I've only done it a couple times. But ayahuasca, hell no, I am not doing that, because I would need to go through a proper training. There's no way I would do that, because I'm not dumb. So you really want people who have that are at a very high level of consciousness, a very high level of spirit, very high integrity. And so you're going to feel that love, you're going to feel that wisdom, and that's when you move forth. And that's the only way you should move forth with it, because now you've got a lot. It's becoming a lot more popular, a lot more accessible. So, but when you do it right, you find like family shaman, and the people you do, if you've never done it, it's like it's an experience unlike anything else. So okay, so let's move into some of the things, like maybe some of your most powerful experiences, or just the one, because it's I love Zen, because Zen is like, it's not a lot of lessons, it's deepening of the same freaking lessons. You know what I mean? It's like there's actually not that many of them. It's just really understanding the same thing. So do you have maybe some top lessons you learned from those ceremonies that you are getting better at integrating, or top pieces of wisdom from that time?
Yeah, well, let's go to your very succinct definition of ayahuasca, which is love. So I completely agree with that. The caveat being the definition that most of us humans hold of love as love is way more limited than her version of love. And by the way, I call her because it's a very feminine spirit, right? So I never refer to her as it. It's definitely a she. So her definition of love and the way that she teaches us to work with the energy of love is honestly some of the hardest experiences of being on ayahuasca. It isn't so much of the darkness, it's the power of the space of love, which is the energy of creation. So when you drink this medicine and you're deep in the lesson of what love really is, because it's pouring through your body, there are places where you feel like, I'm not going to survive this. Like, it's so intense. And what it does is it brings out everything in you that is not love and challenges you to love that too. Like, oh, so you broke somebody's heart, or, you killed a cat, or whatever dark stuff you've done. It's not a matter of not looking at it. You have to put your face in it and find forgiveness and find love for the fact that you made that decision because it was the only decision you knew to make in that moment. Or people have done stuff to you. The medicine will take you to that place and say, forgive them and love them, and even make you feel what they felt, to switch roles. That's love. Love is limitless and expansive, and it goes way beyond however we define it. So that's one of the core lessons that, the medicine started teaching me, and then life kind of throws that curveball all the time to test me. Like, ooh, can you love this? Can you love, this experience, or this heartbreak, or this space of death and loss? Can you love that and trust this is part of love too? Yeah. So that's a really core thing. And then the flip side of that is darkness. It's like, I call myself, again, a shadow worker, because the part of our consciousness that limits us in the definition of love is the part that is in darkness. So fear and death and anger and all of these things that we would just rather prefer not be in our consciousness are, to me, the keys of our expansion. I love the expression, that which we resist persists. So any of that energy we're resisting is the stuff that I like to proactively invite in. And I invite the people that I work with to do the same, the right set and setting, to say, okay, I'm going to sit with this. I'm going to invite in jealousy and resentment and anger, or whatever it is, and transform that, transmute that, be an alchemist, and take that energy and apply what you learn from those profound moments on the medicine, and find the love in that too. I know it's kind of all like out there, intangible stuff in a way, but it's all stuff that we feel and go through. And I think that free will at its core is our ability to choose how we're going to work with the energies coming through us, not determining what energy is coming through. We can't just choose to experience happiness and bliss, but we can choose to experience everything coming through us through that filter of gratitude and love and thumbs up. It's kind of like about saying yes. Because like on ayahuasca, whatever's happening to you, does it do you any good to say, no, I don't want this to happen? Heck no. It's not going anywhere just because you say, no, thank you. I would like that to not happen. I don't want any more visuals. I don't want any more intensity. I would like to feel sober now. She will laugh at you, be like, too bad, you drank the tea. You're in it. Deal with it. Mm-hmm. And so through that space, I have learned to apply that to life, to say yes to heartbreak and death and everything that's happening, because that's where my power is to transmute it.
Right. Yeah, it's on point. It is a little bit vague. It's just, well, not vague. It's a concept that can be applied in each and every moment, right? It's if we have an experience and then we want to stick it in a corner, it stays in that corner energetically in our bodies, in our life, in our auric field, in our experience, in our minds, wherever you want to call it, staying there until you look at it and you say, my dog got run over by a car. And I could have done something about it, whatever you're telling yourself that makes it worse, whatever and it's going to stay there. You got to find forgiveness for yourself, love for the situation, fully transmute it, fully get into it. You got to stick your own face in it, which is the hardest thing. And ayahuasca kind of forces that, but it really comes back to, I really like your point on free will, because our free will is our perspective to choose. It's our perspective. It's our ability to look away. It's our ability to justify or to make excuses or not accept or run away from. So when we can have the free will to, one of the things that I like to offer people if I'm coaching or something like that is like, what's the most beneficial, highest perspective I can have for this shitty situation? Like what can I do with it? Because it's here and I can't change it. That old Zen lesson is like, you can't worry about stuff you can't change. It is. Then how do you move forward? And we can really move forward when we accept what is and what's happened. So really it's simple stuff. It's straightforward, but the practice is the challenge. It's doing it in each and every moment. Right. And you said life will throw you curveballs. So when you're working with people, you can bring all the lessons from ayahuasca to daily life. The thing is about ayahuasca, it really makes it multidimensional. Let's just put it that way. What do you find, the difference if somebody's experimenting with medicines, the big difference between like ayahuasca, Huachuma, or San Pedro, if they are, really new to this and like, oh my God, it's a bunch of drugs. There's a reason why people call them plant medicines. They're not fun. You don't do it and go to a party. It's like, okay, you got to do a diet. You got to get serious. Like it's some serious work. And that's why they call it work too, because it's not necessarily fun. It's probably the last thing is fun. There could be some fun moments, but every time I've done it since time one, it's been, oh God, I'm doing this again. Oh my God, I'm doing this again. Like just, and really smarten up, increase my meditation, what I eat, like everything. When I know I'm committed, I'm just like, cool, gonna be a good boy. And what would you say the main differences are on those three?
Well, the main difference with ayahuasca, from all the other altered spaces I've done, which is a long distinguished list, to be honest, is that I call her the medicine of duality, because every other altered space, like mushrooms and LSD, they can take you to a really cosmic place. They can expand your consciousness and take you on a trip, right? That's why we call it tripping. Ayahuasca is unique to me in that she takes us cosmic. She can go there too, but she can take us deeper into ourselves, deeper into the space of separateness and ego and individuality. Whereas mushrooms and LSD and all the rest of them, you may have, some revelations around that just because you're expanding your consciousness, but not on a personal level that ayahuasca does. She seems to expand us by taking us further in and going in both directions sometimes, which is why I love the expression that she's the medicine of duality. She's both and. She'll take you everywhere. the reason why I love her for shadow work, though, is it's deep in the parts of our souls and our psyches. That's where all of this stuff that you're talking about is hidden. So whatever we've repressed, whatever experiences we've had that we just stuffed down, emotions that we're carrying consciously or not, those are in that shadow space. And ayahuasca is like the only altered space that I've done that will go there, that will open up that Pandora's box and say, ooh, what's in here? Let's check it out. Even if you're like, no, 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 not that box, any box but that box. That'll be her favorite one. Like, ooh, that sounds fun. So that's what makes her different. And then Huachuma and San Pedro, peyote, the cactus medicine. To me, those are most powerfully experienced after you've had a cycle or two or more with ayahuasca, because you've cleaned your vessel, cleaned out your psyche a little bit with her, and probably strengthened your relationship to your ego or your awareness around that. Because the cactus, which are truly, by the way, my favorite to work with just as an individual having experience, because they are fun, or they can be really fun, equally profound, but not so personal, and you don't have to purge into a bucket with a bunch of strangers in a freaky room. So the cactus are best experienced, in my experience, in nature, outside, with your senses fully activated. Whereas ayahuasca is a meditation, and it's an internal process. Huachuma, San Pedro is an external exploration of consciousness. You can talk to the consciousness of the planet or the consciousness of a rock, and basically uncover the secrets of the universe if you're open, if you're a clear vessel, if you've done the internal work to let go of some of your stories and patterns. So they go really well together, not in the same night or weekend, of course, but, to spiritual journeyers that are really attracted to altered spaces as a place of expansion. But I recommend doing Aya first and foremost if you're called to this, because then the experience of mushrooms and the cactus, etc., can be, much more expanding and spiritual and not recreational, which is the highest way to use this stuff.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. And I think that everybody that's even considering any form of, consciousness altering substance, including alcohol, but it's not like, you're altering your consciousness. Meditation is kind of altering it. You need to give it a level of respect to this stuff. Like, even if it's mushrooms, like a small mushroom ceremony or whatever, just it's your intention behind doing it is everything. And so if we can have, really sacred spaces around why we do even the smaller ones before you get up to, the big daddy ayahuasca or big mama, it's that the medicine demands respect. You could, I haven't seen it yet. You could go in there without respect, and you would just get pwned on every single level. I haven't seen it. Yeah, no, it wouldn't be good. It wouldn't be good for you. But I think that just even psychedelics, they can play a positive role in our lives. But for those people who, maybe don't want to do psychedelics, they don't want to alter their consciousness, how can what are some of the things that you do when you're working with a client that can help do shadow work, or what are some common problems, or how can you integrate that information from the medicine and help them really become more complete, bring these awarenesses in without even going to those spaces?
Great question. So for people that don't want to do the altered spaces, the first thing that I recommend, the first tool that I recommend is still an altered space, but it's using the breath. So there's in the spiritual spaces, we call it pranayama. Some people just call it holotropic breath work, where there are people that are certified to do these things. But you generate a similar altered space with your breath, but it's not as scary because it's not hallucinogenic. And, you can always just go back to breathing regularly if you're feeling scared or freaked out or you want it to stop. So breath work, which is another form of meditation, is super powerful to bring up that which is hidden. To people who don't want to do any of that, if you want, or if you just want to go slow into shadow, there's tools like journaling, just really being super brutally honest with yourself on a daily basis when you sit and write how you're feeling and what you're going through. Through it all, every tool that you use, the intention that you mentioned is really what's most important. It's not really so much what you do, it's do you give yourself fully to that process. You set your intention very clearly and say, I want to know what I'm pretending not to know. That was always one of my favorite intentions when I drank ayahuasca. Show me what I'm pretending not to know. Because we all have all the wisdom of the universe inside of us. We all carry all the consciousness we possibly need to decipher this world. We just pretend not to know it, or we've been programmed not to know it, or we've gone through trauma that's repressed our connection to that place. So if you journal, if you meditate, if you have a coach, if you just go out and sit in nature and talk to a tree, I mean, whatever you choose to do it with integrity. Be honest about your shadow, the stuff that you're feeling that is difficult and messy. Be honest about the way you've shown up in the world to that tree or to your coach or to the medicine. It's really ultimately being honest to yourself. But that's what it takes in order to really illuminate the things that are hidden and repressed in you. And the second part is be willing to feel, because stuff's going to come up. And if you go back to your patterns of repressing and pretending it's not there, it's not going anywhere. The only way we can move energy is by inviting it up, and then we have to feel it. Feeling is healing. It's not fun. That's why it's helpful to have somebody that has got your back and can remind you that everything's okay and you're not a bad person just because you ran over someone's cat, or even if you killed somebody. I've worked with people who have killed people and have used the medicine as a way to heal themselves and to realize that they did what was done to them in some ways, that they were doing the best that they could, even in the space of the most horrible decision. So it is possible to heal and forgive yourself and other people of anything, but you got to feel everything around it first and foremost. Boom. I know, intense.
That's a good answer. It's true though. That's probably why we like to avoid those things. I'm not any better. Like ayahuasca made me look at stuff. Yeah, I love how you said that. This box, just any box but that box. Oh God, you're getting that box. What did you just say? Any box but that box. Okay, you're getting the box, and it'll just hold it there in multi-dimensional land until it's like, oh fine, I'm just gonna put you in it. And you're like, oh damn it. I remember one of mine was with my dog. I had to relive his death, and then I remembered that I was like not as good as an owner as I could have been. I didn't take him for enough walks, and I love dogs, and I love the shit out of my dog. And I'm just sitting there, and I was like, don't look at that, and I just fucking start crying. It's like, damn it. And like, yeah, it was a tough one, man. That really hurt because I could have done a better job, but I had to forgive myself. And oh God, I don't even want to think about it. Let's move on from that. I love my dog. Shout out. But that's what it does. So, those energies stay in the body. And so how can, I love what you said at the beginning about realizing that we heal ourselves. And I 100% agree that we're just facilitators. I had Coop Blackson on the podcast, like episode 21 or something. And at the beginning, I was like, hey, brother, and I knew a little bit about him. I was like, tell me a bit about your past. And he goes, yeah, my dad was this healer, like this miracle healer in Africa. And people would come around. And he would heal them of like blindness and things like that. And he just kind of glossed it over. I was like, wait a second, pump the brakes. Did you just say your dad heals people with his mind, and like, or whatever he's doing? He's like, and I was like, well, how did he do that? And he gave the only answer that I could accept, which was he said he didn't do it. He said that he just basically mirrored like you're going to heal yourself, and he just believed it like 10,000 million %, which is not even a number, that person could heal themselves, and mirrored it until they did. And I was like, holy smokes. Okay. So in that concept, which is, a pretty far-fetched concept for some people, but I dig it. How the heck do we heal ourselves? Because I see it as this gap between our false self and conditioning. Now, this is beliefs in parents. Parents are doing the best they can, but they had an experience and they just give you their beliefs. And then you got the other parent. And then they got the friends who believe stuff, and then their parents. And then you've got the external world. So most of it, you don't even know what to believe or what's going on. So you have this big mental barrier that forgets what you actually are, that you can heal yourself and all this kind of stuff. So how do we get to the point of self-healing, of self-love, on a daily basis?
So the only way out is through. So it's back to what we're talking about with shadow. The first thing you have to deal with is all the stuff you're not dealing with, that you're pretending isn't there. Because you can't invite in the light of truth until you're dealing with all of the things that you hold that are not true. I know that's still esoteric, but we can't invite in love when we're carrying our shit and saying, no, but I just want the love. I don't want to deal with this darkness. The only way out is through. So we make our intention, first of all, to get really, really clear on what we're carrying. And one of the easy ways to do that is to look at the results in your life. If you're in a dysfunctional relationship, if you're in a job that you hate, if you're unhealthy, there's all kinds of ways in which the world is just mirroring the way that healer mirrors truth, is the truth about how you're showing up. And it's not about making you feel bad for the parts that aren't in perfect, optimal place. That's priceless feedback to realize, aha, those are the areas that I can show up and work harder. I mean, when you're an athlete and you look at the condition you're in and your body is telling you the truth about the condition you're in. So the same thing is true for the emotions that we're carrying and the things that we've manifested in our life. That's all just feedback for how we're doing. And I think it's really important to look at the stuff that's awesome. We're like, man, my relationship is amazing and intimate. I've got the greatest partner, but my job kind of sucks and my bank account is low, and whatever it is, to look at both and to be just completely dedicated to being honest to yourself, because you're not going to get the secrets of the universe basically by not being in integrity with yourself first and foremost. Does that kind of answer your question in my esoteric way?
No, it's good. It's good. I was taking notes. It's it's interesting. The last 4 or 5 podcasts, integrity's come up a lot, being in integrity. And that just makes me think about myself. And so I feel like I'm integrity almost all the time. That's what I try really hard to do, because I can feel I'm like empath or whatever it is. I just feel shit. I feel everything. So I know if I'm doing the opposite of what the feeling is telling me, and I do what the feeling is telling me all the time, so, and that, that's only step one, because there's so much other stuff that goes along with it. Like, life is a challenge, and so just remaining in integrity can be extremely challenging. But I think it's like the only way to go, because the people that I see and witness and help that suffer the most, they're out of integrity. And if you kind of compromise a little bit here, let's say at work, right? With, somebody at work is slightly racist, somebody at work, and you just kind of laugh, somebody at work is slightly homophobic, and you kind of laugh, rather than saying, this is really uncomfortable. That's not okay with me, bro. You know what I mean? And and then you run away. That's being in integrity, little things like that. You know what I mean? So it can go really, really, really deep. And it's just being your authentic you. And as you do that more and more, I think that gets a little bit easier, but you can uncover more layers of onion and things like that. So I guess, so what I'm trying to really bridge the gap here is, because when you try to explain ayahuasca to people, I don't want it to be like a scapegoat. Some people are like, this is the magic medicine. That's not the idea. But you do have an experience that is wild. One of the things that I've actually thought of last week is, when I was younger, it was really important for me to get out of my body. So lucid dreaming, astral projection, meditation, anything to get out of this earth soup, because this is all terrible. This can't be all there is to consciousness and existence. I don't believe anything. Then I got out for a while doing different things, ayahuasca, lucid dreaming, things like that. Then once you're out, you got to come back in, and then you got to be here in it hard. I can't be up in the mountains meditating, although mostly once a day I'm like, maybe I should just piss off to the mountains. It's cool there. So we're in this and we're rebuilding it, and it can be challenging. What do you feel, is most important for people to as it a daily practice, is just going through and how to live in peace, in harmony, and accept, to really get those deep lessons, tools or perspectives you have on really living with a sense of peace, really living with a sense of love, really living with a sense of purpose or surrender or connection with God, because that's a lot of what people are searching for with ayahuasca. I feel like it always comes down to those thing. So what do you say to that?
Yeah, love this question and topic. So before I answer that tangibly, I want to mention that this is another thing that I think makes ayahuasca sort of unique in the altered spaces, is she's insanely grounding as much as she is cosmic. That's part of the duality of going further in. And even though it's a really intense, profound out of body experience in a way, it's a deeper experience of your body, of being a consciousness in this kind of weird container. So you get to feel unlimited and limited at the same time. That's why it's really intense sometimes, right? You're feeling the contrast of everything, happiness and sadness and intensity and darkness and light. But in this regard, you're so grounded and you're also so open. And I think that, part of the lesson in that, to answer the second part of your question and statement, is that groundedness is part of what helps us maintain our integrity. We have to, in many ways, choose life with every choice that we make in order to get the keys to the kingdom: happiness, abundance, health. We have to proactively choose to be grounded in this body. And so the medicine taught me to be obsessive about self-care. I literally have a list of 70 things on my refrigerator that I can do for self-care. And that's for the physical, emotional, mental, spiritual parts of myself, all healthy, in alignment things like bubble baths and meditation and, doing a juice fast for the day, or intermittent fasting, or all the different things that I've defined as being self-care. And at the end of every single day, I check off on the list all the things that I did. And I tell you that the number is in direct correlation to the vibration that I'm feeling that day. So if it's a 2, I'm low and wanting to drink alcohol or run away to the cave, and escape life. If it's a 40, I am ready to walk through a wall of bullets and feel completely protected. So I think self-care is our way to crack this code on a tangible way and make that our number one priority. And what we tend to do, what we're programmed to do, is to run around wanting to help everyone else, to kind of save the world or save other people. But we're a hot mess. And so we're perpetuating that energy to everyone we encounter. And I'm speaking from experience. I'll tell you that the first time I drank medicine, this was her analogy. She's like, so Kat, you know that expression when you're on an airplane that in the event of a loss of cabin pressure, you need to put on your mask before helping others? It's like your mask is in another galaxy and you're running around trying to help other people with their mask and you're causing more harm than good. And it was so painful to hear because it was really meant well, but that didn't matter. The fact was that I was a hot mess. And I needed to stop and take care of myself so that I have nothing but love and compassion and good energy to share with other people. And the way to do that is just by being meticulous about self-care. It is an everyday thing. So whatever that means to each individual, there are some things that are universal, like meditation. I just can't imagine anybody saying, no, meditation's bad for me. That's kind of weird. But other things are very personal. One of them is buying myself flowers. That's just one way that I feel is really loving, an action I can do that's really loving to myself. But it's a fun game to make that a task, that you make your list and that you update it regularly and you see how you're doing on a regular basis. You don't have to be as crazy as I am and do it every day. But one of the things that makes it so powerful is it gets our minds in on the game. And our minds are the parts of ourselves that don't really get to play in the spiritual space very often, but they really, really want to, which is why we have big spiritual egos, some of us, because the ego feels left out. And so it's going to create a way to be a part of it. And by making a game out of self-care, that's a really healthy way to engage the part of you that is structured and disciplined and, is there to help the logistics every day. So that's one of my superhero tools. And it's so simple. It's so not profound in that it's an every little thing matters. The profundity happens in the totality of it. The fact that I've been doing it every day for so many years and the shifts and changes that have happened within because of that.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's a tremendous answer because that is a very common issue that I see is so many people running out there to help others when they're not all sorted. And, I even see that within myself too. You know what I mean? It's just oh, dude, you're marketing for this person and helping that person, how much time are you putting towards your own initiatives? How much time are you doing to self-care? Now mostly I think that my balance is okay, but really looking at that, so many healers, so many people want to fix yours, what I mean, mentally. I A lot of the times I've been to like seminars and stuff and like talking through things with people, and then at the end I was like, oh, so what do you do? And then, like, I'm a life coach. I'm like, oh dear, oh no. I was like, who are you giving information to? But there's levels, like if you're an abusive, raging alcoholic and terrible human being on every scale, then maybe just an a-hole is a pretty good coach, right? You just scale up a little bit. So there's definitely layers, but I think that the self-care thing is massive. Like if you're going to go to a fitness trainer and they're out of shape and they eat KFC all the time, and that's not the person you're going to pick. But we're in an energetic field. Everything is energy. And so the better we can clean up our energy, that's how you heal people, is you show them the example with the energy that you have with what you do on a daily basis. And so often we neglect ourselves. So we distract ourselves from what hurts, what's painful, what we don't want to look at, and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's a absolutely tremendous answer. So, okay. So that being said, like, what, with your work and people, what are some common things that you see people doing that are just, like repetitive? Like, because I see some repetitive stuff in the work that I do. Do you have like some common issues that you see come up, and then how do you help people overcome those?
Well, it's really common that all of us in one way or another are limited in our thinking. So one of the things I work with people is around the language that they use. If they're speaking about, patterns that they're acknowledging, is like, saying something like, oh, I'm always compulsive, I'm never able to really be thoughtful and discerning about something. And I try to get people to say, okay, say that you've been that way in the past, but you're not that way right now. To be very conscious of the language that we're using, because our bodies are listening, our emotional bodies are listening to every word we say. And to label yourself to say, I am afraid, rather than I have fear, is creating a tremendous limitation. So I really like working with people around language, because language is one of the first places that we can start telling a different story and undoing the patterns of the beliefs that we hold about ourselves, because we all have limiting beliefs. And again, to see what your beliefs are that are limiting, you look at your life, you look at the results in your life, and you can see where you're expansive and you can see where you're limiting. And so to look at the places where you're looking to expand and to become deeply aware of the patterns that you have that create more of those limitations. And starting with language is a beautiful place to start, because then we can start telling a different story and step into the truth of that language and make it our reality.
It's a really great answer.
And I can give you some more specifics around that if you want, but that's
sure. Shoot them out. Yeah, that's good.
So relationships, obviously a big one. Money and abundance, and with money and abundance, it's a tricky one. It's always like, be careful what you wish for. Like, if you talk to people who are, I'm sure you work with people too, who are high net worth, which some of my clients are very high net worth, they're still miserable. They still haven't cracked the code of happiness. So to understand that before you're actually rich is extremely powerful. To know that all of this stuff is just energy. But we have conversations that are very deep, that if I only have this, I will be happy. And it doesn't work that way. My goal with my clients and myself is try to just be happy with what is, not some dream of the future. And that doesn't mean that we can't have incredible ambitions. I'm totally supportive of the fact that we're all superheroes and we get to play as big as we want to play. But first and foremost, let's love what is. If we're sick, let's love that. Let's love the information and feedback that our bodies are giving us around that illness. If we're in a dysfunctional relationship, let's love the fact that this being is powerful enough to teach us a lesson by playing the bad guy. Let's stop being a victim. I would say that's the core thing, is to step out of victim consciousness, to stop saying that the universe or God or people are doing things against you, and to start receiving that everything is just information. And so we can interpret it as something for us. And that shift in thinking, and I'm sure you've seen this a million times with your clients too, is where shit starts happening. And they start going, wait a second, if things are happening for me, then I can trust the energy of the universe. And then, you can be empowered by the fact that you can start to tell a different story. You can play a different game. But you have to first acknowledge responsibility and to have some level of trust that you're not just in a world that's here to torture you. Because if you believe that, you will manifest that over and over again. And it sucks to be in that space.
Yeah, that's those are some really good points there. Talking about victim consciousness, I think is number one. It's such a fundamental shift in consciousness. Either the universe is on my side or it's punishing me. And a lot of people with the toughest lessons that end up, skyrocketing and having amazing abundance or lives came out of a really terrible situation. And that is really the art of alchemy, because alchemy is not, lead to gold, which it is kind of, but actually the art of it is transmuting the energy. So the more fuel you have of like challenge and darkness, the more coal you just put in your combustible energy body that you can transmute to gold, because you were able to hold that amount of coal and not let it just weigh you down because it happened anyway. And we could get into like past life stuff and like contracts where you came down and you're going to play the bad guy to learn this lesson. But when you see it from that perspective of everything, the universe is on my side and it's teaching me something, then it at least puts you in a position of power. Because if not, then you're kind of like, I don't know. I don't find it as an empowering a perspective. You're really a victim and life kind of sucks. And I've been there too. It's like, screw this. And you can stay there for as long as you want. That's an option. But it is not the most useful option. And the stronger you get, some of the strongest people that I know in this life I watched them face, I'm not going to mention his name or even say the exact story, but he's like one of my best friends. And I just watched him go through something with a relationship. And I was like, fuck, if that happened to me, I would be so broken. And, and just the strength and the wisdom and character that he was able to go through that situation with, it just impressed me so much. And I was like, that's what like a developed human being is. They're in this reality and they're dealing with all the crap, but they're not shying away from this challenge, and they never shy away from everything. And they're really grateful for what they have on a daily basis. And it's like this simple wisdom, that really just needs to be embodied in every moment. But if you keep doing it or not doing it, let's say you're not doing it, that's going to accumulate over and over and over, and then you're going to get sick, things are going to happen, and then that accumulates. So it is that practice over time that really empowers us to live a different life, to like one of the examples I gave is like Bruce Lee broke his back in his early 20s, and they told him he wasn't going to walk and he was definitely not going to kick again. He's like, hell no. And meditated and visualized health and fixed his body, and then read so much on martial arts and became the greatest martial artist of all time. Had he not done that, nobody would know who he was. So he had a choice. We all are faced with these choices. So now that we're back in the realm of choice and we're like, okay, this is really good, and think about love, and then, oh man, I'm at the gym and then I got to go pick up my kids and then I got to pay my bills. How do you apply this in like a very fundamental and practical way, or like reminders, or how do you maybe, you know, give some practical advice for this, lovey, airy fairy stuff we're talking about?
Yeah, well, that's always the important part, right? How do we ground this in and make it tangible? And it's a very personal kind of path that each of us do that. But one of my core things that I've talked about already is making it a game, is to remember to be playful with this first and foremost, because it can feel so overwhelming of like, great, now I have to be conscious and every single thing I'm doing and everything that I do is a level of feedback from the universe that's telling me how I show up. And to first just like, and remember to take it one step at a time. So like, for example, if somebody's looking to create a meditation practice, don't say you're going to meditate every day for an hour for the next month and like just go full on, because it's likely not going to work out. And then you're going to feel terrible that you tried to bring it in and ground it in and you fail. Like, I am a big fan of baby steps. Like, there's no urgency to suddenly become a guru in Christ consciousness overnight, because it ain't going to happen by forcing it anyway. So I know it's cliche, but this whole experience we're having, the purpose is the experience, the journey, not some destination. So to first just let go of whatever destination you think you're going to land at and remove the urgency and focus on the first thing that you feel like would be most impactful. If it's meditation, if it's breaking up with somebody that's toxic, if it's changing locations where you live, if it's changing your job, to take one thing at a time. And, unless it's some crazy soul-driven thing that you have to change everything all at once, which, hey, sometimes that happens. I salute that. But if you're approaching it from a logical perspective, is to take it in baby steps. I actually created a game that I play myself and with a couple other people, clients. I just call it the promises game, because I found that the promises that we make to ourselves are the first promises that we break. So it's essentially just having an accountability coach. And once a week, connecting with somebody that you love and trust and saying, these are the 3 things that I'm going to accomplish this week that are going to help me feel more productive and expansive and just happier about being a human being. And they could be, I'm going to call my mom and have a heart-to-heart talk because I've been avoiding her. I'm going to weed the garden and I'm going to work out 5 times. Right? It's whatever is currently moving through us that we feel is a priority, but that we're afraid that we are going to ignore and let life take over. And so you start out with 3 promises. And then if you and your partner, because your partner is going to give you their 3 promises, if you and your partner do those 3, then you ratchet up to 4 the next week. And you go to 5 and 6. If one of you doesn't make your promises, you go back 1. Because it's really important to have accountability and repercussion and no punishment beyond that. You don't have to chastise yourself. You're really honest about why you weren't able to show up and meet your promises. And it's important to call them promises, by the way, not goals, because goals are things that we maybe someday might attain. Promises are like, I'm doing this. Nothing's getting in my way. I promise you. And it's much more powerful. And then the game goes that if you can get up to 10 promises and do those for 3 weeks in a row, 10, whatever 10 promises are coming through you, I guarantee you by the end of that process, you will be an empowered individual that feels like I can handle what's important to me and my life because I just played this game to its fruition, and you feel like a rock star. You see what you're possible of. That's a really tangible, logical way that you can start expanding and playing with this.
Yeah, absolutely love that. I think that's amazing for so many reasons. Like you said, it is interesting that promises to ourselves are the first ones we break. And it hits on self-care. But that's the fundamental thing. One of the analogies I use is like Burning Man is such an amazing experience. And you can get anything you want, essentially, like booze and beer whenever you want, tequila shots. But water is so hard to come by, and you're in the middle of a bloody desert, and you could be stranded out there, and you really need water. And I kind of see this as like love. Love is that water. So if you're not full of it, and somebody comes and it's like, man, I've been out in the desert for 2 days partying, and I really need water. Like, sorry, bro, I don't have any. If we don't fill ourselves up with self-love, with self-care, with that energy, we haven't mastered ourselves to then give it to another person, right? Even if we're like, oh, I would really love to give you water, but you're like, you got no water and your body's all decrepit, but I want to help you. And that's what happens when you are a healer, but you haven't healed yourself. You're kind of like all decrepit, and you're trying and your intention's good, but you got to get some water yourself first there, big fella. And then, let's then please share, because that's the thing. So I think it's really simple and practical wisdom. I think a lot of what you shared, and it's good too for people to realize, you've done almost 1,000 ceremonies. You don't need to do 1,000 ceremonies to know this stuff, to apply this stuff. It just basically, ayahuasca is kind of like a ping pong ball, like playing with a wall. It's going to come back to you. You're the master. Love yourself. These are the same things. You know this. You know this. You know this. And all of these answers are within all of us. We know. I know. And just so open up to that. So I guess I wanted to ask, if there was anything that you wanted me to ask you, if there's anything you wanted to talk about that we didn't touch on, and just closing statements you want to leave the listeners with.
I love where you just took us here in the end that, you don't actually even need to drink ayahuasca a single time to remember all of this stuff. That the first step is really acknowledging that you have everything you need inside of yourself already. And this game of integrity that we're talking about, if it's fully something that you dedicate to, no, you can have anything you want. You can move through your emotions. You can manifest the world. But it's first being proactive and acknowledging that and being willing to do the work, as we talked about at the beginning. It ain't easy, but it's worth it.
Yeah, that could be the bumper sticker slogan for ayahuasca too, or just life, or just, moving through
Right,
it.
absolutely.
I've heard it once before that like we're moving through all the karma of our past lives in this lifetime. Could be true, could be not, but I find it an interesting perspective. Where can people find more about you if they want to get in touch and see some of your work, if you're writing blogs or what you're doing? I know you write for a magazine or something.
Yeah, I write for places like ayahuasca.com and Entheo Nation, but my site is afterlife.coach.
Right on. Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing the wisdom of the thousand ceremonies and being very grounded. That's an issue in the metaphysical community and spiritual communities. We're like out in I'm way out there, so I'm bringing it down and balancing. But just be honest with yourself with where you are, and let's fix ourselves. But thank you for bringing this information forth, and it's cool because you're an example of someone that's like, hey, like I've done this, like I know what it's like, and it's like very real, and nothing is like too out there. You don't do some weird ceremony, and you got to do four Hail Marys and do this. You could just just start with loving yourself. Very practical. So,
Yeah.
just thank you for the work, and thank you for coming on and sharing.
Thank you for having me. I'm such a fan of all the work you're doing too. So it's totally an honor to be here, Matt. Thank you so much.
Wow.